The Mage class set has been fully revealed. New cards are always exciting, but is the Mage class set just a little bit too slow to see play in a competitive Hearthstone standard game? Let's talk about it. This is the original announcement for the Mage class set. I think it's important to take into account what the developers are saying about this new package of cards for the Mage. The Mage class set centers around ley lines, powerful spells that can be upgraded over the course of the game. There are 3 ley line spells. New cards let you enhance them by increasing power, reducing cost, or making them trigger additional times. This creates a flexible spell package that rewards smart sequencing and long-term planning. So, right off the bat, we want to take a look at the ley line cards themselves, as this is going to be what the Mage class set is based around. We're going to start off with Bursting Ley Line, 4 mana, deal 4 damage to a random enemy minion. Excess damage hits the enemy hero. So right off the bat, this card feels extremely weak without any upgrades. We already have in Hearthstone a Hunter version of this card that's 4 mana, deal 6. You get to pick your minion with that Hunter card to be able to maximize face damage. And I would say, quite honestly, this amount of damage, this effect, this card probably is going to have to be upgraded 2 times before we would ever really want to play it in a game of Hearthstone. So you draw this early in the game before you've been able to buff it, you really just don't want to play it. Crystallized Ley Line, 6 mana, summon a random 6-cost minion. Again, not great. I personally am not a big fan of all of the random effects that are in Hearthstone. A 6-cost minion is a really large minion pool. There's going to be high rolls, there's going to be low rolls, but I think on average, 6 mana for a random 6-cost minion is a really, really bad proposition. You think about the ways that you can buff the card, reducing the mana cost, maybe summon 2 minions. Again, to me, this is another card that we're going to want to buff it 2 times before it's actually going to have a decent payoff, and anything beyond that is probably going to be good. Leyline Nexus, 2 mana, draw a card, it costs 1 less. Again, you probably don't want to play this card without any upgrades, but I do think only 1 upgrade is going to be good enough to start to get some value out of this particular Leyline. So that's kind of where we start off with when the game starts, and then we're going to look at ways, other cards in the set, how do we increase the power of these cards to get them to be something playable. So already it feels a little bit slow. We're having to play cards before we can play these guys, just to be able to make them, quote unquote, playable in a game of Hearthstone. So already just a little bit slow, but if the other buffing cards are going to be a little bit better, then that could potentially be good. The Arcanomicon, 7 mana, get all 3 ley lines, so we're going to be able to generate additional copies, which is good. And choose an upgrade. So the Arcanomicon upgrades are going to be ley lines, trigger an additional time, ley lines cost 2 less this game, and increase the effects of the ley lines by 2 this game. So the Arcanomicon, it does give powerful buffs to these cards. A little bit of a drawback is that it costs 7 mana. It's a little bit hard to imagine a game of Hearthstone currently as standard exists where you basically have 7 mana and you're kind of skipping your turn and not doing anything on the board. So the 7 mana legendary, it does feel a little bit slow for me. I'm not sure that this card sees play, even if the package itself is going to be good enough. So we're going to have to hope that the other cards in the class set that buff the ley lines are just a little bit better. Taking a look at some of those cards, we're going to change slides here, and we are going to start with the Mystic Runesaber. It's a 2 mana, 2/3, does have elusive. Increase the effects of your ley lines by 1 this game, so it is a small buff to our ley lines. The 2/3 body is not great, but it does have elusive. That'll make it a little bit harder for our opponents to be able to remove in the early game. The body itself, largely irrelevant. It's a River Crocolisk body. It's just kind of not great. You play this on turn 2, you do buff your ley lines, but you're a little bit slow in terms of developing the board. Would really like to see something more along the lines of like Rush on a card like this to make it a little bit more playable. It's just a really low impact body that's going to be on the board. Taking a look at Ley Walker, 3 mana, 4/2. Your ley lines cost 1 less this game. Death Rattle, get a random ley line. So the positive for this card is that it is going to get us an additional ley line in our hand. So if we're not drawing ley lines from our deck, we are going to have a way to be able to at least get one in our hand, although it is random. at least it's random on guardrails. There's only 3 options, but there's going to be times where you're not going to get anything playable or anything good from that. The 4-2 body, really not that good. It's going to be easily removed. It's not going to be able to impact the board in any way. It doesn't have any type of keyword. Again, I'd be looking for something like Rush or maybe even Taunt with more health on a card like this. Really be able to have some type of an impact on the board and maybe value trade. This card is never going to value trade at only 2 health. So again, you're almost like doing nothing to be able to buff your ley lines and get a random ley line. So it feels just a little bit slow. And then rounding out the set, we see the Surge Needle, 4 mana, 3/3, Battle Cry. Your ley lines trigger an additional time. So again, it is a buff for your ley lines, but the 4 mana, 3/3 body is just going to be super, super irrelevant in any normal type of a game of Hearthstone. So thinking about this package and a deck that you're going to play it in, if you go the Mystic Rune Saber into Ley Walker into Surge Needle, in order to get those 3 buffs on your ley lines, you're just really, really slow up through turn 4. That's kind of going to be like the dream curve in terms of being able to buff our ley lines. That's not going to happen every single game. They may only have 1 buff or 2 buffs on average. So again, it feels like the package is going to be a little bit slow. And then out of the 3 ley lines, only 2 of them are really going to be able to impact the board. Of course, the ley line nexus is only going to be card draw. The crystallized ley line random minions, this is going to be feast or famine. Depending on how much mana and how many minions we're going to summon, it may not be potentially great. And I'm not fully sure how this card is going to work as far as the buff. With the increased effect, does it increase the mana cost or does it actually give you an additional mana? That's going to be a key point that we're going to need to look at as that information becomes available. But the random minions just doesn't really seem all that great. And then dealing damage to random minions, again, it just doesn't really seem all that great. There's potential that the minion that gets hit isn't even fully removed. We're going to be disappointed on that. And I think largely the excess damage hitting our enemy hero in the face is going to be, for most Mage decks, it's really just going to be irrelevant. A few times where you're able to get a lethal on your opponent, but outside of an aggro Mage deck, excess damage hitting the enemy hero isn't really going to be super, super compelling here. So the entire set, this Mage class set, it just feels a little bit slow to me. I'm not sure that there's really going to be a benefit in including this package, and I would think at the very least you're looking at you're looking at like a 10 to 12 card package just to be able to play this in a deck, which is kind of a little bit of a big package because it limits the amount of slots that you're going to be able to use to build around the package into an overall deck. The ley lines themselves, I don't think they're going to be good enough to actually win a Hearthstone game on a consistent basis, and so you really don't even have a win condition here, at least in my opinion. Totally wrong about that, but the set feels a little bit slow and a little bit too low impact. Just my honest opinion on the set. Hopefully I'm wrong on that. Would love to have some new Mage card to be able to play when this mini set or class set actually launches, coming up within about the next week or so. Switching gears here, we are going to go over and take a look at comments on the most recent video. That's going to be the Tavern Regular Episode 2, this being Episode 3. Got a comment here, glad to see you're playing and having fun. I agree with you a lot about balance indications of how much random chaos type stuff they include in Hearthstone, especially the sheer amount and its general power level being so high. So another person a little bit frustrated with the random stuff and just these large discover pools, really, really swingy games with things that you can't play around. See here my response, thanks for watching. Hopefully they put tighter guardrails on Discover Pools in the future. So a perfect example of those tighter guardrails that I'm talking about is going to actually be with this particular card right here, where Death Rat will get a random ley line. There's only 3 options, so you can potentially just play around that. Good for us here. And one additional comment. Tough one against the Priest. I think you had him. Bubble Pally not as easy as it seems to pilot. Lots of intern stuff to navigate. I think the list with location instead of fins and forging is better. Locations aren't great, but are nice to activate eggs and synergy with the last click giving Divine Shield. Maybe even shave 1 for the tech card that destroys location. That's the Demolition Renovator. Lots of decks with locations in the meta, not just Elise. And then I actually had a bit of a lengthy response here. Thanks for watching. I was playing poorly, so it was a deserved loss. No excuses from me. If you did watch that game, I played very bad. I deserved to lose. I think I probably should have won the game if I played a little bit better. I could definitely see cutting Fins. He hasn't been super useful in my experience. That's 100% true. Fins, you know, not all that great. Kind of like niche uses. A lot of times your starting hand isn't really all that good anyway, and you don't want additional card from that. So I could definitely see cutting him. I'm a little bit more fond of Fordring. That could be personal bias. I just like the redundancy of being able to draw the Gelbin, just to be able to get his powerful effect in play. I wasn't a big fan of locations. I don't really like the Paladin location, the 2-mana location that gives a buff, and then it gives the buff Death Rattle, and then buff Death Rattle, and the Divine Shield, I believe. I'm just not a super big fan of those. Generally speaking, I don't like tech cards like Demolition Renovator or Royal Librarian that show up in some lists. They feel like Feast or Famine and end up as Famine most of the time. Demolition Renovator, you know, when you're paying that 3 mana to destroy a location, you're only getting the 3/3 body, so is it really giving you the value that you want out of that 3 mana, or is there something better that you can play it on? Certainly there is upside to destroying a location. I'm just not sure that it's worth actually including a Demolition Renovator in any version of the deck. That's just my personal opinion. Not a big fan of tech cards because you're almost handicapping your deck in a way, at least in some matchups. I think you're better off just playing a card that's going to be generally good and powerful for your deck itself, rather than trying to counter your opponent's deck. Having said all that, the highest win rate end of turn Paladin on HS Guru at the moment, when filtering out low sample size lists, is running 1 location, 1 Sheltered Survivor. I'm assuming to be able to shuffle back in like a Sand Fury Aura or a Chronological Aura. 1 Royal Librarian and only 1 Sand Fury. That version currently showing a 1 to 2% higher win rate than the other versions, which is pretty interesting, with a decent sample size as well here. So we can see that my personal bias could actually just be wrong. I might be giving away 1 to 2% every time I play End of Turnidin because I'm playing the wrong list. You bring up some good points, definitely something to think about. So thank you so much for the comments. I appreciate watching, appreciate the love, and love being able to have discussions in the comments like this. I think these are just like great, high quality comments. Absolutely love it. Thank you so much. That's going to do it for this video. Thank you. See you next time.